The government has officially declared a national crisis on oil shortages, lowering Australia's fuel standard in a bid to direct an extra 100 million litres into the domestic market. Joining us to discuss today's headlines is Independent MP Dai Le and ALP President Wayne Swan. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Wayne, first there was no crisis, now there's a crisis. This admission, it sounds like an admission that Australia actually has less fuel than the government had been letting on.
Well, that's not true. It's an international crisis which has caused a spike in demand. People have been hoarding. The same supplies of petrol have been coming in all the way through this period. But people have reacted domestically and plenty of people have been trying to hoard fuel. So the government's putting an extra 100 million litres into the system ASAP.
You've got regional communities, though, saying we don't have fuel. Batlow, the local independent service station Batlow, has no fuel. Farmers are saying...
Sure, that's right. And I've seen it too, but I've also seen people turning up at petrol stations with cans and so on. The fact is, people have been hoarding. That has led to shortages. So the government's putting an extra 100 million into the system.
Okay,
I don't think people are hoarding, Wayne. I understand that councils are actually also scrambling. We've been told by wholesale supply that there'll be an issue with diesel, and that will impact our garbage collection and waste services. So it's actually people aren't hoarding. It's actually there is a fuel shortage, and obviously the government has finally acknowledged that it is a national crisis. So I think it's about leading and providing some kind of telling the community, look, it is a national crisis, we're going to work on this. And I think it's very important now for the government to really use this opportunity to really think for the future, any future crisis for Australia. We need to actually have reserve. Currently, we're importing, fuel, so we need to actually think about the future of Australia's economy. And
well, I agree with a lot of that, Di, and that's exactly what the government was doing again in the Parliament yesterday, and I'm sure you were there. And
yes,
you heard it.
I was.
And they've been doing it continuously.
They have not admitted it was a national crisis.
The supply has not changed. The supply has not changed. What has changed is domestic demand, and the government is responding to that.
Is this going to be enough, though, Wayne? Is this going to be enough? This so-called assurance that the government has from Ampol that this extra fuel, this dirtier fuel that is going to be made available is going to go to the regional areas.
Well, that's what the government is saying.
Yeah, so is that going to fix the problem?
Areas, yeah. Well, I certainly hope it will fix the problem because we lost in this country over a prolonged period of time a number of oil refineries. And one of the things we are doing is moving to a change in the energy mix in this country to make us self-reliant. The government's been working on that for a long time, and it's been opposed by the opposition.
But I think it just shows that, we're still very much dependent on fuel, as you can see.
Sure.
And therefore, we need to really think of the future because as somebody who embraced renewable, we cannot just rely on renewable in situations in crisis like this, whereby farmers, garbage trucks that are cleaning up our streets, that is going to impact households a lot because if you don't get your garbage collected, I can tell you, families
Nothing
are not
could
going to
be
be
more
happy.
reliable than domestic wind and solar. Nothing could be more reliable than that and not hijacked by international circumstances.
Well, Wayne, you've got farmers saying that what the government has done is a welcome first step, but they want the government to consider emergency action because they're saying that our food supply is
That's
at
what
risk.
an extra 100 million litres is all about.
Well, farmers say that's a first step. It's not going to fix the problem.
Well, it depends how long the international circumstances go for.
But irrespective of how long the international circumstances will go for, I think the government now needs to plan for the future of Australia's security in terms of oil security, food security. We live in a very, flux, global economy. So I think it's very critical that the Labor government now works towards that.
It has been pointed out that the government is raking in more money in terms of GST when the fuel price goes higher. There have been calls for the government to perhaps cut the fuel excise. As a former Treasurer, Wayne, is that a good or a bad idea?
Well, that's a lie. I think we've seen from a couple of our political opponents that the excise is on the volume, not on the price. And the GST, when it is paid, goes to the states, not to the Commonwealth.
Well, I did call during the, in my first term for, cutting the fuel excise. And I think at the bowl, at the pump, families going to the pump, going to work, especially in Western Sydney, in Fowler, people are still using cars, filling up their petrols. I think the government needs to look at freezing it. Under the coalition during the COVID crisis, it was reduced, so that way people don't feel it at the pump when they fill up their petrol cars. So I think the government should look at something to alleviate those pressure at the moment, because the cost of living, because we will see the increase in price in groceries, in energy, and
There's
the
no
petrol.
doubt the cost of living is the biggest issue in the country. I absolutely agree with you on that. There's a range of measures you can put in place to deal with it. The government's doing that, and unquestionably over time they'll be doing other things.
I mean, we could talk about this all day.
All day.
And I think this is just the beginning of what's going to be a long-running issue. Thank you both for joining us this morning.
Thank you.